account, they got fees. I'm not going anywhere. So they said.
There's a guy up in the stands.
The business owners respect the
He has like an orange shirt on. He was from the dynamo. And his wife got there. And
Works out well.
the girl's aunt and uncle live in the dynamo. They're Madison's godparents. And they came to the game. What do you sit next to?
Oh, no.
Yeah.
He goes, well, our coach doesn't say
took some
fast.
training
Look
over
at
summer.
that one. We should give him direction. And I said to him, I go, yeah, but if you're on this team, you wouldn't appreciate that every game all the time. I go, it's literally so annoying.
You would know the direction.
And he goes, look at them. They have a whole other team. They
Tracking the program.
Oh, it's funny. We only have one player. And I'm like, this is what I go.
About 10 days before the program, this is two huge boxes. There
Is that
was
right?
George Foreman grill, there was cast iron, there's all sorts of stuff in there that we could
Where's
use
my
during
picture sent me?
training. And I'm actually gonna kind of roll some of that stuff into my science class.
Because the one I gave is the one that we got from coach.
If you're raising beef, you want to be a
I find it
geneticist,
nice.
you can be the best lines. You need to be a chemist, you need to be an earth scientist, a landman. Yep. Oh, yeah, all these different things. And I can use
I'll
that
follow
kind
you.
of
No, I don't want to follow you.
classes.
Monday.
And that's exactly what my point has been here. That
Yeah, whole-
agriculture is so important. We should be
At
doing
home.
more teaching it here because
I'll tell
it's more than just.
Oh, you just milk my cow.
Yeah, there's so much that goes into it. So.
Just control your apples.
There you go. Well, you can. But
I just heard fries.
then you got to buy them dinner.
Oh, there's something else.
So,
Good.
yeah, chance to do that. Yeah.
Hey, Kathy, what's the calling?
It
Say
turns
hi.
out that the national defense next year, 2022, is going to be held in Saratoga Springs. Oh, no way. And they offered, they said, yeah, we're going to be reaching out. So if anybody would like to come up for the national program, it's actually the Ag in the Classroom building a town hall through the state.
That's not.
For what?
I'm thinking about proposing.
I don't know.
Contact
Be on
better
the call with
up there here, which is right down close.
Indiana.
Apiculture, beekeeping, all these. That was good fun stuff.
Yep. Start. Good evening, everyone. It's 7 o'clock. I'd like to call the meeting to order. First off, I know there's a large number of people here this evening, and I'd just like to remind you that if you'd like to speak, we ask that you fill out a fleet card. If you rise and join me in the pledge of the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. This evening, we have a presentation on our updated code of conduct by Mary File and Caroline Cox.
Everybody, I think that everyone knows me, but for those that don't, I'm Caroline Weitman, elementary assistant principal. And I'm Mary File, the assistant principal of the middle school and high school. Good evening. This summer, Mr. McCabe tasked us with working on code of conduct and revising it. It hasn't been updated since 2017. So we worked a lot this summer on updating it and getting a lot of feedback from our stakeholders. So we just like to give you an overview of that process that we took. Our goals as we started revising the code of conduct were to look at our student demographic, societal changes that have happened over time, and make sure that we are making our code of conduct reflect the most current updates. Our whole goal in this entire process was to highlight all of the positive interventions that we feel our district currently has in place and is currently working towards to try to alleviate any sort of disciplinary issues. So we really have worked hard to highlight the positive interventions, and you'll see some of that in our presentation tonight. We also wanted to establish a common system for office discipline referrals, K-12. So all 3 buildings are utilizing the same data and taking the same steps. So there's a consistency across the district in the way that we are reporting. We also wanted to collect feedback from stakeholder groups, including our fellow administrators, parents, teachers, staff members, and any other stakeholder groups that we felt were essential in getting input on our current code of conduct. And we just wanted to establish a process now that we currently have 2 assistant principals, which is very exciting. We wanted to create a process that we could revise the code of conduct each year to reflect our current district goals and needs, and also any changes in society that we would need to make adjustments to our code of conduct on.
So one of the first steps in the process was to ensure that we were collaborating with multiple stakeholders. We wanted the revisions of the code of conduct driven by our collaborative conversations with multiple stakeholders. So we initially started off with our administrators. We assessed what previous needs in previous office discipline referrals and what trends they were noticing, so that we could be reflected in the code of conduct and make sure that the code of conduct was supportive of those needs. We sought out the input of our classroom teachers. We asked them if there were any changes they would like to see in our code of conduct that do not currently exist. We also sought feedback from parents. We had feedback from over 30 parents in the district at all 3 levels. And then this evening we held our public hearing.
So as I stated before, one of our primary goals was to highlight the positive behavior strategies and preventative measures that we currently are working on and have really developed over time in our district. And so we included a whole section in there that includes all of the positive behavior strategies that we are currently doing, any events that are taking place at any building level. So we have events such as name calling week in the elementary, we have spirit weeks in the high school, which really focus on developing character in all 3 buildings. So we wanted to highlight that, and that was done through a multi-tiered system of supports, which we call our MTSS team. Mary and I are leading that team this year, and that includes our counselors, our psychologists, social workers, teachers, and any other service providers that we feel have an impact on our students' development. This team met twice over the summer, and we are meeting once a month to establish a process for evaluating ourselves and figuring out how we can best meet the social emotional needs of all of our kids in the district. So we really feel strongly that the positive behavior strategies are outlined in the code of conduct. They were never done before. And we just feel that that's an essential piece in looking at the whole child as opposed to just one isolated disciplinary issue.
Some other notable updates, we included preventative measures that are currently in place at Akron Central Schools. We cited specific educational law terminology. The general organization of the document is very easy to manipulate and find the information that you're looking for. Specifically, we took information that all the students receive on their student handbooks and put that into the code of conduct so that students have access to it in multiple forms. We updated the drug, cannabis, marijuana use language according to the Board of Education policy that was recently adopted. We included the use of newer drugs. And we updated the code of conduct in relation to more current internet appropriate usage. Now all of our students have one-to-one Chromebooks, so it was important that we had appropriate use of internet and technology incorporated into the code of conduct. And specific language as it relates to social media and cyberbullying.
So the reason why we did that was last year, obviously, we had a change in our educational format, and a lot of our students were utilizing Google Meet for classroom instruction. But we did have students who would access Google Meet unsupervised in non-school hours, so that was a reason why we needed to include those types of situational occurrences into our code of conduct. We also updated our dress code just to make it more current with current trends, and we also updated our code of conduct with the dress code in relation to masks in school due to state mandates. So that is now outlined in our code of conduct. We also, as I stated before, established a more universal system for classroom office discipline referrals. So now we feel that a very strong sense of consistency among the district and how these things are being reported. And as I stated before, we really want to focus on the whole child and not just an isolated disciplinary situation. So our MTSS team will be meeting once a month by building, and then quarterly as a district to evaluate how our interventions are working academically, behaviorally, and with a certain attendance record, so that we're looking at the whole picture of students and not isolated disciplinary issues. So We feel that we have a good system in place to alleviate some of these and to catch kids before, anything worse happens. And we feel like we have a really strong tracking system currently.
So what's next? Following this board meeting, we would like to send the information to our students, staff, and families. Students will receive a copy in their handbooks and agendas, and principals will review the expectations of all students during the first few weeks of school. Parents will receive a copy in the student's agenda. Staff has provided an update through our faculty meetings over the next month. It will be posted on our website at all times for access, and it will be reviewed with all building principals regularly through our administrative cabinet meetings. We would like to implement our new referral process, K-12, immediately. Utilize the code of conduct as a working document. Again, hasn't been revised since 2017. So Caroline and together with our administrative team would like to continue to have it as a working document that we reevaluate yearly. And then we would like to continue to work with our district administrators and key stakeholders as we make future revisions. Any questions?
I can just add a comment. Well, I just want to honestly add a comment. Mrs. Koss and Mrs. File have really taken on this responsibility with such great forethought. The manner in which you developed your process for revision was comprehensive and inclusive. And I've obviously reviewed the document with you. It is probably one of the better structured codes I've ever seen, thanks largely to all the work that you've done. Ultimately, the final product of your collaborative work speaks for itself. The fact that you have taken the time to change it from a simple or rudimentary reactive set of enforcement procedures for violations of code to a much more comprehensive, proactive, preventative tool seeking to provide supports to children that may be struggling with conduct issues and really looking at replacement behaviors as opposed to simple consequences for infractions is a world of difference. It's really the type of programming that we try to instill. And so I just want to acknowledge the significant changes that you made in all of your work. We're very grateful. And then finally, you're right, it's a living document. It really needs to be updated annually, and it will you're on out. So thank you.
I did work through parts of it, and I appreciate you sending a highlighted version as well as a clean version that made looking at and noticing the changes much easier for someone who hasn't seen the document before. And I echo Mr. McCabe's comments that it looks very comprehensive, and I appreciate the work that you put into it. Thank you. I'd also like to point out that the updated code of conduct required a public hearing. This worked and satisfied that requirement of having a public hearing. The next item on our agenda is our hearing of individuals and delegations. The public comment session is for comment, not for question and answer. It is for community members to share their concerns or thoughts with the board. When speaking, please be sure to approach the podium, state your name and address for the record. And if you are representing an organization, we ask that you identify that as such. We ask that you maintain a respectful demeanor and tone with your comments. Please direct all comments to the board members and not to other members in the audience. We are allowing each individual who presented a pink card to speak once and ask that you limit your comments to 3 minutes out of respect for others in attendance this evening. We also ask that you do not identify individual staff members or students by name for critical comment. Direct these matters to the superintendent outside of this meeting during school business hours. In the interest of civility and respect of different points of view, please do not applaud or boo speakers. The board will listen to all public comment, but it should not be expected that the board will respond. The superintendent may respond, or we will request individuals to submit questions in writing so that we can get back to you at a later time. I do have several pink cards this evening. The first is Cassandra Judge, who would like to make a student presentation. Cassandra, if you could just state your address for us.
Hi, my name is Cassandra Judge, and I am here to talk to you about my inclusive playground project. In the spring, I went to the playground with my class. While playing, I began to think about the students with disabilities and what they could do there. I thought about including a wheelchair swing and began brainstorming how I could make that happen. That swing would allow children in wheelchairs to join in on the fun with others. I quickly shared my idea with my teacher, Mr. Vito, who then encouraged me to share it with Mr. Esposito. With most of their support, I began fundraising through a GoFundMe page, holding lemonade stands, collecting cans and bottles, and sharing my thoughts with local businesses and service organizations. I am proud to say I have raised enough money for Akron Elementary to include this swing on their playground. My goal was $2,500, and I'm turning over $3,265 to you tonight for that swing and everything additional we provide for this inclusive playground. In conclusion, I want to thank Mr. Vito, Mr. Esposito, and all the individuals that donated in the following businesses and service organizations: Harry's Ice Cream, Ryan's Club, Akron Rotary Club, Niagara Label, and Taste of Buffalo. Thank you.
Thank you, and congratulations. Thank you very much. Our next person is Erin Paulkowski.
Let me just start by saying I'm Erin Paulkowski and I live at 6778 Cedar Street. I just want to thank you, Mr. McCain, for all you do for our school, and thank you, school board members. Thank you, Phil and Bob, Jim, Heather, Eric, Jordan. Thank you for all you do for us and for our students. I also want to just thank you for choosing to give up your free time to serve the parents in the district. I know you have other things to do. You could be doing other things. You chose to run for school board. Your job as a school board member is making choices for our school. Sometimes those choices make people happy and sometimes they make them mad. Can't please everyone, because what's good for one family may not be good for another, and what's good for one student may not be good for another student. Every student is unique and has different needs. 19 years ago, my husband and I decided to start a family and have children. I was a stay-at-home mom for 13 years when I took a job subbing here when my youngest entered kindergarten. You could say that I'm an expert about my children. I know their likes, their dislikes, what they're good at, what they're bad at, what frustrates them, what they're allergic to, what their health issues are, what foods they like or don't like, what school subjects they're good at or bad at. With 4 kids, they're all different, but I know them. No one else knows them better than me, except for my husband, their dad. But lately, politicians seem to think that they know what's best for my child. They're basically saying to parents, you don't know what's good for your child, but we do. They think that every child is the same, that they're a collective and can be treated equally. You wouldn't know by looking at my 4 kids, but one's allergic to tree nuts and one is allergic to sulfa drugs. Does that mean tree nuts and sulfa drugs are bad and no one should ingest them? No, that's nonsense. Those are good things. It's just not good for my kids. But yet the government thinks that everyone and everything is just a one-size-fits-all. Decisions should be left up to parents and not the school board, not Erie County, not New York State. There are 1,300 students here, give or take, in this district, and you can't possibly know each child individually. This is about choice. This is about freedom. Freedom to choose what I put in my body and freedom to choose what is put in my child's body. Freedom to make individual medical choices. This is where my doctor and my children's doctors come in to help me make informed decisions regarding their health, not politicians. Which leads me to a quick lesson in civics. The Declaration of Independence. We hold these truths to be self-evident that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. These rights are from God to the individual, to me. That to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the government, Government gets their power from me, the individual. That whenever any form of government becomes destructive of these ends, it is the right of the people to alter or to abolish it and to institute new government, laying its foundation on such principles and organizing its powers in such form as to them shall seem most likely to affect their safety and happiness. So when the government becomes destructive, corrupt, tyrannical, and try to take away my life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness, I need to abolish that government and institute a new government, which means that I need to vote in new school board members, new state Congress, new governor, new US Congress, and a new president. Let's move to the Constitution, the 10th Amendment. The power is not delegated to the United States by the Constitution, nor prohibited by it to the states, are reserved to the states respectively or to the people. So basically, any power or right not specifically listed in the Constitution as belonging to the federal government belongs to states or individuals. This is so the federal government will not, they'll be limited in their powers. Again, power comes from the individuals, me. The 14th Amendment, all persons born or naturalized in the United States and subject to the jurisdiction thereof are citizens of the United States and of the state wherein they reside. No state shall make or enforce any law which shall abridge the privileges or immunities of citizens of the United States, nor shall any state deprive any person of life, liberty, or property without due process of law, nor to deny any person within its jurisdiction the equal protection of the laws. In layman's terms, I'm a citizen of the United States. You cannot take away my rights. The Supreme Court, Troxel versus Granville in 2000. The 14th Amendment's due process clause has a substantive component that provides heightened protection against government interference with certain fundamental rights and liberty interests, including parents' fundamental right to make decisions concerning the care, custody, and control of their children. And to quote Justice Sandra Day O'Connor, the liberty interest at issue in this case, the interests of parents in the care, custody, and control of their children, is perhaps the oldest of the fundamental liberty interests recognized by this court. Basically, parents' care, custody, and control of their children is up to the parents. Another Supreme Court case, Prince versus Massachusetts in 1944. It is cardinal with us that the custody, care, and nurture of the child reside first in the parents, whose primary function and freedom include preparation for obligations the state can neither supply nor hinder. And lastly, Congress, the law. This is what Congress stated when they formed the United States Department of Education. Parents have the primary responsibility for the education of the children, and states, localities, and private institutions have the primary responsibility for supporting that parental role. New York State Court said parental rights describes the legal relationship between the parent and the child. This legal relationship includes the parent's responsibility to financially support the child, the parent's right to custody, to visit with the child, to make educational, religious, or medical decisions for the child. This is not Republican versus Democrat. This is not left versus right. This is not anti-mask, pro-mask. This is not anti-vax, pro-vax. This is about freedom. This is a freedom issue, freedom to make choices as an individual and as a parent. Thank you for listening.
Our second speaker is Nathan Witowsky. Nathan Witowsky.
Sorry, didn't hear.
Sorry.
Hi, I'm Nate Witowsky, a Bloomingdale, live right up the street, alumni of this school. I was here before you guys a month ago to express my displeasure with your mask mandate. I would like to re-emphasize that. Just now was an instance where I had a hard time hearing you. Imagine a student in a classroom not being able to hear their teacher, not being able to see their teacher's lips. trying to understand complex information, right? Trying to learn, trying to communicate with other students, with other classmates, having a group communication, right? It's difficult with mask on. It is. I wanted to re-emphasize my strong displeasure in a mask mandate. And I also wanted to really reinforce my, I wouldn't even call it displeasure, but my strong opposition to any kind of vaccine mandate that may be coming down the pipe. Right? My daughter's in 5th grade. She's not eligible for the vaccine as of yet. There's talk of a vaccine being approved for 5 and up, coming up at the end of the year. My daughter will not be attending your school with a vaccine mandate. I don't think I'm alone when I say that.
Yeah, thank you. Our next speaker, Ryan Allen.
My name is Ryan Allen. I'm a village resident. I have 2 children that attend 1st grade here at Akron Elementary. It seems as of lately, there's been a lot of conflicting information coming from our local, state, and federal levels, the Department of Health and the CDC. So with all the conflicting information, what is a parent supposed to do? We research. We look at all the information available through the CDC website, through the state websites, through whatever means necessary, we research. We take all that available information. What's become apparent is that the numbers that have been being pushed out to mainstream media are misleading at best. I'm not here to tell you that COVID-19 is not real. I believe in COVID-19. I believe that there are treatments for COVID-19, regardless of what you personally feel that they are, there are treatments available, whether it's a vaccine or other methods. I'm not anti-vax. I'm not anti-mask. I'm choice, just like a lot of the people in this room. We believe as parents that we have the freedoms to make choices for our children. I will not continue to allow the school, the county, the state, or the federal government make those decisions about what is right for my children. Mr. Paulkowski and the Erie County Department of Health has overstepped its constitutional authority with these mask mandates. The numbers that have been published by both the New York State Department of Health and Erie County have been used to stir fear in the population of our great state. Well, let's actually take a look at these numbers as it relates to school-age children, because we have to follow the science, or at least that's what we're being told. In the state of New York, there's been 43,819 deaths reported. Out of those reported, 31 have been school-age children between the ages of 0 and 19. So mathematically, that is 0.00070746% of deaths have been school-age children. Now, if you remove those with comorbidities, that was 9. We come down to 0.0050207. Here's some other numbers that you may not get to think about, just in your daily life. Per 100,000 in the United States for ages 1 through 4, 2.8 will drown. 2.3 will die in a vehicle accident. 2.2 will die in a homicide. 2 will die of cancer. 1 will die of cardiovascular disease. 0.8 from flu or pneumonia. 0.7 from suffocation. The COVID death per 100,000 is 0.2. In ages 5 through 14, 2.1 to cancer, 1.9 to vehicle accidents, 1.5 to suicide, 0.07 to homicide, 0.06 to cardiovascular disease, 0.5 to drowning, 0.3 to flu, 0.2 to COVID. According to these statistics from the CDC, and various other statistics from the New York State Department of Health. In vital statistics, you have a higher chance of being aborted in the state of New York than you do actually contracting or dying from COVID. 33% of kids are aborted every year in the state of New York, according to vital statistics. Moral of the story is, it's not the job of this board, the Erie County Department of Health, or any other individual to decide what's best for my child. You're not their parent. You're here to teach them English, math, and science, not to teach them life lessons. That is our job as parents. You do not supersede us, and nor does anybody else. Thank you for your time.
Christina Weidman.
I'm alone today. Good evening. My name is Christina Weidman. I live at 44 East Avenue. Tonight, I would like to read you a quote from Assemblyman Jeffrey Dinowitz. Quote, Albany update, new vaccine mandate bill for schools. I have introduced new legislation along with State Senator Brad Hoylman, which would mandate COVID vaccines for all children who attend school in New York State. This bill would take effect 30 days after the shots receive full federal approval, which currently applies to children ages 16 and up. As you may recall, State Senator Hoylman and I successfully passed legislation in 2019 to eliminate all non-medical exemptions to school vaccine requirements. This effort was hard fought and we received significant pushback from anti-vaxxers, much of which was tinged with anti-Semitism and other unpleasant undertones. I expect a similar response to this legislation, but I feel strongly that it is imperative to keep kids safe while they are in school. As we look around the country, there are a significant number of bills being introduced and passed in various states that are anti-science and are going in the opposite direction that I believe we should go. Some states are banning or trying to ban vaccine mandates as well as mask mandates. I cannot fathom how any policymaker with a conscience could intentionally put children and school staff in danger from this deadly pandemic. We should set a different example here in New York, and I'm excited to move this bill forward, unquote. The bill he's referring to is Senate Bill S-7320, which relates to the definition of administration with respect to immunization to prevent COVID-19 for children between the ages of 2 and 18 years of age. As a mother, I cannot fathom injecting my children with a vaccine to protect them from a virus that still has a 99.8% recovery rate. As a mother, I cannot fathom injecting them with yet another vaccine. As a mother, I cannot fathom or understand when I started co-parenting with the state and not my husband who's sitting behind me in the audience. As a mother, I cannot fathom that my children were free all summer long, doing anything and everything possible without social distancing, but my 9-year-old has to come back to school and wear a mask all day long. I am pro-vaccine for the long-used routine vaccinations for children. Both my children are fully vaccinated. I am pro-science, but if and only if the science makes sense. These decisions should be between a parent and their child's pediatrician only, certainly not by a politician. Where there's risk, there must be choice. With the current vaccine mandate for healthcare workers, we are seeing people leaving their jobs left and right. Hospitals have become a place of third world care. The University of Rochester Medical Center just started bringing back the religious exemptions for the COVID vaccine because they lost so many of their doctors, nurses, and staff. There was a protest there yesterday in front of the building, and they had around 700 people there. If we have these many healthcare workers questioning the vaccine and willing to lose their jobs over it, why in the world would I ever inject it into my 9-year-old in order for her to receive a free education that my husband and I actually pay for through our taxes? Parents are going to question and need proof of why this vaccine is necessary. We're not just going to go along with anything anymore and continue to comply. Tonight, I am here to ask the school board to take a bold step. I think that I can speak for most parents here tonight that since we are against the mask mandate for our children, We will never be okay with injecting them with an experimental vaccine. I read you a quote earlier from Assemblyman Jeffrey Dinowitz. If you search that post on social media, you will see 1.4 thousand angry comments from parents before his moderating team shut down the post from commenting. Vaccines normally need at least 2 years of study before receiving full FDA approval. I'm asking you to get a jump on this now and to write a letter to the state letting them know that parents strongly oppose this mandate. We are not going to put up with this mandate. It's imperative that we move on this quickly. As one of the fathers had stated at the last school board meeting, parents have remained pretty civil discussing the mask mandate. However, if this vaccine mandate goes through, you will no longer see parents civil. You will see parents angry and in an uproar and withdrawing their children left and right from the public schooling. You will have to let teachers and staff go because there won't be enough students for them to care for. Bottom line, this vaccine should be a choice. We may have lost the mask battle for now, but we will not lose the war. Masks are a sideshow. Mandatory jabs are the main event. You work for us, but more importantly, you work for our children. There has to be something deep in everyone's soul that makes them question everything that is happening. As I stated at the last meeting, moving forward, any letters to the state written by Superintendent McCabe and President Grant should have each one of the school members' signatures on it to show unity and solidarity. You can either stand with us or you can stand behind us. Regardless, we will continue to push forward and to fight for our children with everything that's inside of us to truly protect their health and safety. Thank you.
I wish to truly thank every single one of you for being here this evening, for sharing your concerns and having the time and taking the time to be here and share with us and with the rest of the public who are viewing online your concerns. We take your concerns seriously. We have advocated for this issue and other issues throughout the years, and we encourage you to advocate directly with your elected officials. Those are the people that are making the decisions and making the mandates that we as a board are required to follow when we swore our oath to uphold the Constitution of New York State. I want to thank you again all. Item number 4, committee reports. Rec board. Anything to report, Mrs. Bragg?
I think, Debbie, I'm not on the rec board, but I do know that the rec board is, if they haven't already contacted Roxanne, but I think they're gonna start looking at bringing rec back, because I think they're able to use building. I've heard mumblings. Other than that, I don't have a report.
Okay, thank you. ECASB delegate meetings tomorrow night. I will be in attendance. Legislative, Mr. Paulkowski.
The next meeting for that is the first meeting will be on the 30th of this month. We are meeting prior to that, or I joined a subcommittee of that to try and organize for legislative process and what some of the topics are that the ECASB will be advocating on behalf of. So I will bring tonight's topics to their attention.
Thank you. Budget and Finance, Mr. Kenline.
Budget and Finance will have a meeting on Monday, the 13th, which is coming up next week.
I'd like to recognize and thank the Executive Director of the ECASB, David Lowry, for attending tonight. Dave has been instrumental in helping the board. He also ran a board retreat 2 years ago for us. Native American Committee, Ms. Horsdale is not here this evening. Item 5, Superintendent's Report. Mr. McKay.
Good evening, everyone. I will make sure that you can hear me, so try to project. I want to start this evening. Oh, did she go? Well, I wanted to start this evening by thanking Cassandra Judge for her incredibly thoughtful, amazingly adult perspective to see something in her community, into her school, and on her own volition start to fundraise for her fellow students in need. So if you missed Cassandra's comments, she raised over $3,000 for a wheelchair swing and donated that money to support. So I wanted to thank her. I also wanted to thank Mrs. Paulkowski, Mr. Witowsky, Mr. Allen, Mrs. Weidman. Some of you I've spoke to privately or via email for coming to the board this evening, for the time and thoughtfulness of your comments. If you're willing to share those, I know many of you are reading. If you're willing to send those to me electronically, I would appreciate having them. So if you're willing to do so. We're here, we're back. It seemed like forever that we were to reopen our schools and have kids back with us every day. I truly want to thank and congratulate our teachers, our staff, and our administrators for the successful opening of schools. A lot of work went into this summer preparing for the return of our kids. So these first 2 days have run exceedingly smoothly, and it's because of the work that went ahead of time. I also want to thank all of our parents that I know that a lot of work goes into preparing to send your kiddos back to school, and starts with they're excited to get up on the first day, not so excited to get up on the second and third day, but I know how much work you're putting in at home, so thank you as well. I had the opportunity during opening days to deliver a message to our staff, and I identified some priorities. So for the good of the board and the community that's here tonight, I just wanted to briefly touch on some of those. Our first priority as a district, and I'm talking about every employee, whether you're instructional or non-instructional, is to develop deeper relationships with our students and with our parents through forming personal connections. Our kids have been away from us for too long, and they need to return to not the educational program that they remember from 2 years ago, but to a new program, a program that's really focused on meeting them where they're at. We know that some of our kids have missed valuable instructional time. They've missed forming bonds and relationships with significant adults and developing relationships with kids. And some of them, quite frankly, might just be nervous about coming back to their demands of school. So schools are a social place. Learning is based on relationship, is a priority throughout our school year. One of our second priorities is the advancement of our staff's content and pedagogical skills. We spent a lot of time on staff development this summer. We intend to infuse our new learning standards in ELA and math, developing database protocols so we can catch our kids by monitoring them, providing interventions before gaps in their learning begin to appear. Continuing the amazing growth we had in the utilization of technology. No one's a fan of COVID. No one's a fan of remote learning. One of the silver linings was the significant advancement in the practical and purposeful use of technology. It's never a substitute for classroom instruction or real life experiences, but it can augment them, and we want to continue that momentum. And finally, one of our priorities, and these are not all encompassing, is to deepen our knowledge and understanding and capacity to serve and work with our Native American students. The administrative team embarked on a 3-day professional development program, and I've had veteran administrators say, I've learned more about our Native American community in these last 3 days than in all my years of working here in Akron. It was a transformational experience. Our intent is to more deeply understand their culture, their perspectives, so that we can serve and work with them better. This is part of an ongoing professional development plan that the board will participate in, the teachers will participate in, will reflect, review, adjust moving forward, using the voices of our students in large part to help guide our way. I want to thank all the parents that attended our informational meetings. We had a 6th grade parent night for our kids moving up to middle school. We had our athletic parents or students who participate in athletics. Those parents came out. I want to thank them. Our freshman orientation and parent assembly went well, and our kindergarten parent meeting. So again, thanks to all the parents. I want to update the board on some of the announcements that came out of the September 2nd memo from the New York State Department of Health, one of which was an expectation for COVID testing. And I want to be clear with the board, as we hear testing, we lump it all in one category. There's 3 types that memo required of districts. The first type is an opportunity for any individual or student with parental consent that chooses to participate in surveillance testing. So what that means is if you choose to sign up and randomly once a week, they take 10% of consenting individuals and they give them a COVID test, a PCR test. And that's just a screening tool to see if COVID is present in the school. It's not mandatory, it's not required. It's an opportunity for those individuals that want it. The second type of voluntary testing is called proximal testing. This would be the case, let's say that there was an individual in a classroom, could be a staff member, could be a child that tests positive. There's a contact tracing protocol that says if you're in 3 feet for more than 15 minutes, your contact trace, you're placed in quarantine. Proximal testing is for all those outside of that 3-foot bubble. If they were to say, oh my gosh, my child was in that room, I'm concerned, I'd like my child to be tested. With parental consent, that child can be tested. Again, not mandatory, but we are mandated to offer it. So we're working with the county on developing that protocol. The county's not ready yet. Their intention is to send us a nurse from Buffalo Home Care that will take care of the screening testing for the 10% that consent weekly and proximal. Follow me? The third type of testing, this is the one that really made the big splash. That is any individual employee who is required to show proof of a negative COVID test in order to work in a public school. So a teacher, an administrator, a bus driver, if they don't want to participate in that weekly testing, they have the option of voluntarily giving documentation of their vaccination. So this is a big hurdle, quite frankly, for schools to manage. We have begun that process. We solicited information from all of our employees, letting know that they can voluntarily provide us evidence of their vaccination of COVID-19. To date, that's been open for 2 days. I think we had 112 people respond out of approximately, help me out, 225, 255, thank you, 255. They have until the end of, actually until Monday to respond. So those folks that don't respond, we now have the obligation to test them weekly. We are working on that. I will tell you that Erie County Department of Health has said to us thus far, we're not going to help you with that. It's up for you to figure that out. So here's our options. We can twist some arms with the County Department of Health and see if they can help us. Or maybe I should say twist some arms. We can encourage the Department of Health to help us in this with this need. We can tell the individual employee, go to Rite Aid, no cost, get a test, get back to us, or we can seek to work with a third-party vendor that does this type of work using some of our federal money. Every district is facing this challenge right now. We're all exploring these avenues, trying to work on a plan that makes the most sense, that's the most practical for our employees. So I will update the board as that develops. But again, you're going to hear about testing. Don't lump it all into a single category. It's really the 3 types: proximal, the screening, and then the required testing for school district employees. I mentioned just now an opportunity for families that if they were to choose to have their kids voluntarily choose to sign up for the screening or the proximal testing. We're still waiting for some final details from the county. I have an informational PowerPoint slideshow all set to go. I plan on sharing that with the community the moment I have greater clarification from the county that they're ready to do it. I don't want people to sign up for something and the county to say, sorry, we don't have a nurse ready for you yet. That was kind of mixed messages we've been trying to avoid since day one. So if you're hearing about these things, just be patient. The county has said they would anticipate starting on October 4th, but until we have a nurse assigned to us, I'm going to hold off, if that makes sense. Anything else on that before I go on? I'm sorry, I have a lot tonight. I just wanted to update the board that we have had some positive cases in the district that have impacted some of our student athletes. I won't get into the sport to protect the confidentiality of those individuals, but one of our varsity soccer team, I just said it, so. No, there you go, you know the sport.
Everybody knows.
Everybody knows. Our varsity boys soccer team is on pause because of contact tracing that is involved in that sport. So they should be eligible to resume play on September 18th, provided that we have no additional individuals test positive.
Pat, can you explain that more? I
Sure.
don't understand, like, it feels like we went backwards when it comes to sports.
Yeah.
And COVID.
Yep.
Stuff.
Yep.
And I thought it was 2 people,
Yep.
not 1. So why is the team on pause?
So you are right, Mrs. Bragg. If one person tests positive in the sport, that individual and any close contacts are on pause. If 2 or more test positive, the whole team is put on pause. In this case, it's my understanding that with the contact tracing, the number of students and coaches impacted wouldn't let us field the team. That's what was reported to me by the athletic director.
But I thought it also had something to do with who's vaccinated and who isn't vaccinated.
Right. So if you're vaccinated, you're not required to quarantine unless you're told otherwise by the county. So my understanding is we don't have enough athletes or coach to field that team at this time,
But they can still go to school.
but they can go to school.
I don't understand that.
I didn't write the rules.
I know, but that's my point. Like,
Yep.
they can still go to school, they can do all these things, but we can't play soccer. It just blows my mind. Like, I don't understand how we went backwards from last year to this year in cases of sports. And then still being able to attend the district.
You're right. If you want me to give you an explanation that you won't necessarily agree with, I can. They would tell me because of the preventative measures, mitigating strategies within the building, such as social distancing,
We're outside. We're
masking.
outside playing
Right.
sports.
Just saying, soccer is considered a high-risk sport.
No, actually soccer is not because it played last year. Football and
That's right.
wrestling are considered high-risk
That's right.
sports.
You're right. Mrs. Bragg, I can't tell you the rules. I will tell you that the AD told me we didn't have enough kids or coaches to field this team. Anything else on any of that?
No.
Oh, that's good. All right. Staffing update. We're working to refill these remaining vacancies we have. In addition to some retirements and late resignations. Here and elsewhere, a lot of districts are struggling to fill critical staffing roles. The good news is our transportation department is operational. We are still short 3 drivers and 1 aide. However, we have enough subs and mechanics able to drive that there's been no interruptions to our transportation, getting our kids to school on time and home on time. Facilities, we need 1 cleaner and 3 laborers. Those are all posted. We're accepting applications. If you're out there who knows someone who needs a job, please tell them to apply. Instructionally, We are still in need of filling the middle school and high school psychologist position. That is a very difficult position to fill. We are beating the bushes. We're looking at expanding our job posting to Syracuse and Rochester, contacting I've been in contact with universities, trying to find someone. Even going the contracted route, contracting with an agency, the agencies don't have school psychologists right now. So difficult position to fill. We're reassigning some of the duties of our elementary psychologists so that we're making sure that none of our mandates in terms of student testing are being interrupted. We're in need of a long-term sub for middle school. We're in need of a middle school teaching assistant and 2 high school teaching assistants, and obviously per diem substitute. At the moment, we're covering everything, but obviously we want to fill out these vacancies. Talking to colleagues within our region, everyone is encountering the same thing right now. Just an update. I know Mrs. K, you asked me about if I had any information about before and after school care. I did call Miss Jeans the other day, and they still don't have a teacher when I spoke. So they're not able to host an after school program at this time. I've reached out to a local church that had offered after school programming in the past, and I left them voicemails and emails to see if there's any type of partnership we could form or anything we can do to support our families that are in need of after school. I haven't heard back from them yet. You know that the district, as part of our SURSA money, is required to offer some after school programming. We intend to work on that. However, it is not after school. We won't be able to offer childcare until 6 p.m. More likely be 45-minute sign up after school programming for kids K through 12 in the traditional format, not a daycare. So unfortunately for our families, finding something in the community is difficult, and it all gets back to that central issue of employment and finding people to work. Hoping with the changes to the unemployment monies, maybe some people will start soliciting for work. Transitioning again to another topic. I have shared with the board the advantages that we have seen over the last year by contracting legal services through Erie One BOCES. As you're well aware, the board has board-appointed law firms that support us when we encounter legal issues such as the capital project, where we're engaged in negotiations, things of that matter. But there's also day-to-day issues that contacting someone from a law firm is quite costly to the district, not the best use of our resources. So we've done contracted services with Erie One BOCES, having someone from their staff with us 1 day per week, and it has been tremendously advantageous. The volume of work we do, the fact that we get financial aid back on those services, make it very cost effective. And finally, our efficiency has been tremendous. One of the things I'm looking at, taking a deeper dive in, is to whether or not we should expand that service to get someone to support us with things like ADA accommodations, MOAs, MOUs. The COVID leave laws have changed once again, and allowing individuals or guiding individuals through the COVID leave process is quite cumbersome and time consuming. So I took it upon myself to reach out to BOCES about who they may have in their cadre to expand our services for an additional 2 days, with the intent of being more cost effective, a wiser use of taxpayer dollars, and greater efficiency. I then interviewed 2 individuals just to get a feel for their backgrounds and skill sets. They are both retired HR directors that work with Erie and BOE supporting component districts. And it's something that I'm sharing with the board this evening to get your perspective before I pursue it any further. I think it's an advantage to the district. One of the things that when I met with the individuals, I probed them on whether as part of their service during this 1 year basically pilot program, if they would do an audit of our HR processes and make recommendations. So at the end of the year, we can evaluate this pilot, these additional hours. And it's really based on hours billed. They can bill us at quarter-hour increments. I'm sorry, quarter-day increments to make recommendations. So before I pursue any further, just wanted to get the board's feeling on that idea.
Sounds like a good idea.
Yeah, I know of, I've spoken to other superintendents who have done this, and not only do they sing praises of the individuals that are available to us, but also of the service itself. So again, just trying to work more efficiently and more cost effectively. The board is at a point where we are required to identify auditors, both internal and external, for the next set of years. So Mrs. Treader can do an RFP, a request for proposal, for independent auditors to serve the board. I really just need feedback, and when she writes through the RFP, whether the board will be looking for a 3-year, a 4-year, or a 5-year agreement as part of her proposal package.
I think there is advantages to some consistency, and I think we should look for a 5-year proposal on that. There are advantages of having some consistency in our auditors.
We have used a 5-year RFP in the past, and it certainly has worked to the board's advantage. One of the main items where I will be soliciting your input, your thoughts, your perspectives on has to do with field trips, and the other is use of facilities. So we can start with field trips. Right now, there is no guidance on field trips, nor is there any guidance on restricted areas of travel. Local field trips are probably the easiest one to contemplate. Typically, these occur on a single day. They present the least amount of travel and really the least concern. The other field trip is the overnight field trip, or those that require an extensive amount of travel. And by there, I'm talking 7 hours or more on a school bus. Those are obviously more challenging. There's more variables at play. We anticipate a field trip request to New York City by the Foreign Language Department. And there has already been concern that I know board members are aware of about a proposed field trip to Disney World in Orlando, Florida. I had a meeting with Mr. Dimitrov and the music department on the Orlando trip on September 1st during our superintendent conference days. And I frankly had a hallway conversation with Mrs. Quinones today on the New York City trip for the Foreign Language Department, where basically said, I'm talking about it with the board tonight, we'll get back together on it. In regard to some of the information I ascertained from the music department, they highlighted some of their concerns, and I'll share those with the board. Not in any particular order. First is the social distancing requirement, and whether or not that would apply to hotel rooms. My understanding, Mrs. Bragg, you may know better, or those board members that have done the trip, it's typically 4 kids in a room. And
4 to 6.
4 to 6 kids in a room. And
Gotta
if
keep
we
the
were,
cost down, Pat.
pardon me?
Gotta keep the cost down.
Yeah, so exactly. It's a lot more affordable to share the cost with 6 kids in a room than a social distance requirement that could be as few as 2 kids in the room. So that was one. A concern over transportation and just having to wear a mask for, how long is that bus ride?
26.
24 hours.
26 hours. I'd love you for
Not
doing
what
it,
I've
Mr.
done
Grant.
before. Right, Erin?
Twice.
Twice. Those are some of the concerns. I think that, and again, these aren't in any particular order. A major concern that was expressed to me was how they might have to respond to symptomatic individuals. Or should a symptomatic individual get tested, be positive, have to go into quarantine / isolation and being so far from home. So if a student or a chaperone has positive, trying to set them up in a separate hotel and then trying to figure out how they're going to get them back home where they really can't be in proximity to peers. So that isolation away from school, or I'm sorry, away, that when you're that far away from school, and the transportation. And then the last concern, and I know these are all what ifs, but they're important to contemplate, is the potential for forfeiture of monies or deposits if individual kids who paid for the trip test positive, are in quarantine, and they can't go. So those were all the concerns shared with me during that meeting. I talked to them about inherent risk we have on any field trip, that a child could become sick or injured, and what practices we typically have placed, recognizing that the quarantine issue is more than just a nuanced difference, it's a significant difference. We decided at that meeting that I would share this information with the board tonight to solicit your input. There would need to be an opportunity to work with our AMP and gather their input and to really hash out these issues, gather some more perspective. I know that the kids were told they weren't going, and that wasn't necessarily anticipated by me, and I apologize for that. But here we are, and there is a need for those other steps to take place, for the board to share their perspective. I've been invited to attend AMP next week. I look forward to that conversation and to gather more information. So that's kind of where we are on that. I really talked a lot. I'd like to hear from the board.
Mr. McCabe, why are they making decisions on a trip that's 8 months from now? This is 8 months. If they know where COVID's going to be in 8 months, it's pretty impressive. I mean, we can't go backwards. The whole thing that we're trying to do here is move ahead. Move ahead. We have 5 days of school now. We're slowly chipping away at this, but then a trip that kids have been waiting for many years to go on, we're talking about canceling. And you have your music staff walk in on day 1 of school and tell all the kids, many who are seniors, who this is their last shot, that it's off. Yet nobody's talked about it. And I'm just looking to find out where that came from, who was in the meeting, who you're talking to, who is making that decision, is the decision final? And are we going to start being a little realistic with our future plans here? We're all coming to school, we're all sitting in here right now. There were parades this weekend, there's football games going on, not just here, but in big stadiums all around your county. I understand the concern if it was to go today with the rates down in Florida, but this trip is 8 months away. I'm a little frustrated that we're that short-sighted that we can't put a plan together and react a little further down the road. you have any answers for me on that?
I can give you information. I don't know that I can give you answers, but
Okay.
to answer your question, I pat myself on the back. In regard to the time frame, the 8 months.
Yeah.
A decision has to be made far enough in advance. And Mr. Massey, I don't know if it's 8 months, 7 months, 6 months, but far in advance to secure the spot.
You already did
Whether you're going to, you have to tell the entity, whether it's Orlando, Disney, Florida, or Pittsburgh, we want to compete.
Right.
So you don't get closed out. So that's why they felt the need to make a decision.
But that's done, as I understand.
I
Mrs.
think
Gregg may know more than I do.
April is done.
I
Yeah,
don't
I
know.
think we have confirmation that we can participate in
Right.
April.
So that part's done, which you can always walk away from.
Then there's obviously the fundraising piece and the commitment of the parental consent.
Sure.
So that's the best as I can answer the timeline question. of why now? Whether that's satisfactory or not, that's
No,
what I
no,
know.
I get that, but there hasn't been a survey put out. It should
Right.
be up to the parents if they want to let their kids go. It's up to the.
Your next question was who involved?
Yes,
It was the music department, all members.
okay,
Myself and Mr. Dimitrov. This was 2 o'clock on September 1st. At that meeting, they shared their concerns with Mr. Dimitrov and I, or they shared some of these things I've said. At that meeting, we talked about a couple of things. One, that I would be sharing those reservations with the board, because ultimately the board authorizes these overnight trips. We talked about a need to potentially identify an alternate if that trip, because of the logistics and things, we don't want the kids to have no trip. So is there an alternative that would be appealing, maybe not as appealing to kids? Certainly the competition itself would be robust and big enough that our kids would have that experience. And we talked about the needing to solicit input through a parent survey. As to why the kids were told, not really sure. So I met briefly with Mr. Dimitrov, and clearly there was a miscommunication from his understanding and my understanding what was communicated with the kids. So it happened. You can't go back and change it. That happened. What we have to do now is re-engage our music department and our kids to say, we're in a process right now.
Sure.
So that's where we are. We're in a process. So as I mentioned, I have a meeting with AMP a week from today. Coming?
oh, you know it. Where,
We
have
don't
any
have
of the
enough
staff,
room in the basement.
any of the music staff, well, I wasn't invited, but at least the president's here. Any of the staff been on this trip before?
Yes.
I don't
How
know.
many of them do we know?
I don't know.
One
They
and a
didn't go since I've been here.
Pardon?
One
Debbie?
and a half.
One? Okay,
2.
Debbie's been on plenty of times. Megan's been once.
okay. All right, so they know what's involved. All right,
All I know is band is selling mums for the Disney trip. If anyone would like to buy any mums for me, I have an order form. Let me know. Okay? It's expensive to go to Disney, so thanks.
so.
I haven't, Mr. Massey, I haven't, just for what it's worth. Oftentimes, I'm curious to know, what's the school across town or across county do? It's nice to know. I haven't solicited that input. Doesn't really necessarily impact our decision, but it gives us some context. I would say that the process that we need to engage in relative to the music trip has to be replicated by the proposed trip to New York City. Again, I think that all of our teachers who have sponsored trips, to my limited knowledge over the last 2 years, have been very responsible about ensuring the safety of our kids and developing itineraries and protocols. And I would expect nothing less on these proposed trips.
When the New York City trip was canceled a year and a half ago, were those students out all the
Yes.
money for it? Okay.
With regards to the local trips. I know that, getting your kids out of the classroom, getting them someplace, where they can see something relatable to what they're trying to learn in class. If we can do it locally, if we can do it safely, I would strongly encourage us to do that. It doesn't have to be a fancy trip. I mean, taking the kindergartners down to the zoo is, a great thing, for them. And they've got a lot of these places have educational opportunities that the teachers can coordinate with the sites to tailor their presentation. So if we can do it safely and we've got the buses and the drivers to get them there, then I would be all in favor for us to pursue that to the greatest extent possible.
I'll give you an opportunity to speak shortly, sir.
This is a question, it's a request. If they can't remove their mask, Superintendent, could you please reiterate the content of the comments?
All right, I appreciate that, and I will ask the board members to take their masks off while they're speaking, so you can hear.
Like I said,
Nope.
now, if they can't do it, you could just reiterate.
Thank
the
you.
content of the comments. Thank you.
You're welcome. I appreciate that. It's been indicated, and for those of you that don't know, I was the AMP president for 4 years before joining the board, and I did participate in 2 Florida trips and led one of them as president. The concerns expressed by the music department are real. They're certainly different now than they were when I did this 5 years ago, but they're still real. But I agree with Mr. Massey that 8 months is too early to cancel the trip. We need to explore those opportunities. We need to give the parents the opportunity and the music parents the opportunity to find out what the community wants in this case. Mrs. Bragg, would you like to speak?
You said it for me.
All right. Mrs. Bragg is the music parent president currently.
I mean, I will say, we might have other obstacles besides just going, we have obstacles already, like busing is very hard to come by. I've called several companies and they all don't have busing because they don't have drivers. You might have to fly, just saying, Bob's the pilot.
Charter flight.
Charter
That's all we gotta
flight,
do.
Bob's the pilot.
You can
So,
complain, it's 2 hours there.
we have
Not
lots
that
of
hard.
hurdles to overcome. I mean, but the plan is for us, we are fundraising to take our kids to Disney and then we'll just try to come over the hurdles that we can. So I appreciate it.
Okay.
Anything else you'd like to hear from the board on that, Mr. McKay?
Not on that.
All right. Anything
more.
else you'd like to cover?
Yeah. One more thing.
Got more.
This one will be easier, I think.
I
I
don't think
think,
so.
I don't know.
Never know. Okay. Use of facilities. As you recall, the guidance had been to limit outside organizations using the facilities. We did that, but then in the spring, we allowed facilities to be used because the numbers were going down. The Delta variant wasn't present. And now here we are, slightly different set of circumstances. We have on ballparking, I'm looking at a list of them, approximately 10 local organizations that often provide recreation or just supplemental opportunities for our kids or our community members to enjoy activities or events here on campus. These are indoors. There's cafeteria, the MTR, the boardroom, the the vestibule. When we have the craft fair, it basically takes over the elementary school in the summer. Field hockey, indoor field hockey.
Yeah. Woo-hoo.
Akron Youth and Recreation is a large program. I want to get the board's perspective on the resumption of the use of facilities and whether or not the board wants to take at least a precautionary measure to limit the facilities to community organizations that are predominantly serving
The students.
people, children and adults within the Akron community, because we will get a lot of calls, a organizations outside of Akron to use our facilities if their home districts are limiting them. So swimming is the best example, where they may not, a swim club, there's many examples, but here's a good one. A swim club can't swim in District X anymore, so they're asking all the other districts around it. So it does put a significant strain on our staff. We are short-staffed in the facilities department. So opening it wide is a challenge. We could obviously charge a fee, which we typically don't do for community-based organizations, but just some perspective on that, if the board is willing to share.
Well, I think rec and sports programs are our kids. They're already in this district 5 days a week and on the fields. I have no problem letting those organizations use our facilities for our children. I think that's the right thing to do. I believe these kids need more of the norm, and that's getting them back to more of the norm. And I think, you know, they need to make sure that they know they should be Akron students, probably. I don't think we should, you know, allow, I don't know what anyone else thinks, but I think that that's the way we should go with that.
I agree that we should make more opportunities available, but I would also, because of the short staffing and the additional requirements that would be put on the staff that's here, that we, instead of throwing the floodgates open, we crack the faucet, we let it drip a little bit, see what can we absorb. I'm not saying we need to set a quota, but like you said, let's focus on our kids, programs that, you know, that benefit our community before we start taking in those other area programs just because we have a facility that they might be able to use.
I agree. I'd like to see it reopen as well, but perhaps case by case basis. You know, I think the craft show, even though it really benefits the PTA, that's really stretching it. But it'd be nice to see the kids back in the school, you know, doing Cub Scouts and all the Girl Scouts, Girls on the Run, cheer, recreation. I know that they're all interested parties that are coming back, want to come back.
I think if you do a case by case, you look at the history of the organization, the previous use of the organization, the composition of the organization. In many cases, you know, Girls on the Run, mostly comprised of students within the district, recreation, primarily either students within the district or community members within the district. I mean, they are paying for the facilities. It's something we need to return. But I do agree with Phil. One of the other aspects is in regards to scheduling. Somebody like Boy Scouts, they may meet once a month in the facility, whereas recreation has a larger program. You may have to just evaluate. Maybe recreation offers a slightly smaller contingent of programming, or the schedule is adjusted. Instead of having swim 5 nights a week, they have it once or twice a week, but you can adjust it accordingly, start off with one thing and then work into it. As Mr. Kenline said, evaluating where you have with staff, maybe the availability of staff increases, depending, again, as you had pointed before, with employment being where it's at, it may allow us to offer additional, you know, opportunities, but at least for the short term to start off and evaluate on a case by case, and then you have the controls, like you said, from outside organizations looking to utilize your facility because they've been closed off from their own facility.
I agree with everybody as far as, you know, bringing it on slowly, but I would also say that's as long as all school activities are continuing. I want to see open house, homecoming, everything keep going. If you even start considering any of that, then outside stuff has to stop. And right now I see absolutely no reason why you would be considering that.
Well, I can speak to,
I figured we'd roll into
I can
something that we'll
speak
get
to
asked
homecoming. To credit to, you know, Mr. Dimitrov and Mrs. File and our class leaders. They've got a solid plan in place. They've been really thoughtful we are still bound by social distancing requirements, but we want kids involved. And so things like pep assembly and the powder puff, the intent is to do those outside. If we have to move something indoors, we'll figure out a way to do it. But they've got a good plan so that homecoming can be fully engaging and meaningful. As relates to parent open house at, I think it's on the 25th, Mrs. Cox, is that right? In the elementary, a lot of districts have made them virtually this year because you lose some of the, you have kids and adults commingling, and so I have to have that conversation with Mr. Esposito. I know most districts, in fact, have made their open house virtual. To some degree, because for some parents, it's just quite honestly easier, but we haven't had that conversation yet. But I know homecoming is planned. What I think, Mr. Grant.
This, I would like to comment. I agree with Mr. Massey that any outside group activities need to stop before we cancel internal activities. But in the interim, and hopefully we don't have to cancel any school activities, any group that uses the facilities has to follow the same protocols that we do with our students and staff.
Yeah. So we have a lot of requests right now. Mrs. Redmond and I looked at them today, and all these folks are waiting to hear back from us. I wanted to have the conversation with the board first. They are all community-based. Most have opportunities for children, but some are, frankly, like you mentioned, the craft show. Those are adults, but they're taxpayers, and I personally think we should welcome them into our facility that they support. But we haven't Lions Club. We don't have one yet from them, but it's another community, not necessarily child-based, but still a very supportive organization within Akron that, to me, it would make sense that they would have use of the school facilities, given the amount of support they give us. All right. That was a very long superintendent report, but that's all I have unless there's additional questions from the board.
Thank you. Item 6 is an instructional appointment. This is an individual motion. Gina Bergman, Spanish. Our recommended actions at the Akron Central School Board of Education, upon the recommendation of Patrick D. McCabe, Superintendent of Schools, hereby appoints Gina Bergman, who holds permanent certification in the Spanish 7 to 9 extension area, to a probationary period in the Spanish 7 to 9 tenure area for a probationary period commencing on September 1st, 2021 and expiring on August 31st, 2025, unless extended in accordance with the law. This expiration date is tentative and conditional only, except to the extent required by the applicable provisions of Section 3012 of the Education Law. In order to be granted tenure, the teacher must receive composite or overall annual professional performance review ratings pursuant to Section 3012C and or 3012D of the Education Law of either effective or highly effective in at least 3 of the 4 preceding years. And if the teacher receives an ineffective composite or overall rating in the final year of the probationary period, the teacher shall not be eligible for tenure at that time. Salary for the school year 2021-22 will be in accordance with the district AFA collective bargaining agreement based on Schedule 2, Step 1. Move Mrs. K.A.
Second.
Seconded Mr. Kenline. Questions or comments on this item? For those in attendance, we pause. We work electronically with board docs and we vote electronically. And Mrs. Redmond needs to set that up.
Motion carried.
Thank you. Item 7 is personal instructional. Our recommended action is that the Akron Central School Board of Education, upon the recommendation of Patrick D. McCabe, Superintendent of Schools, does hereby approve the following instructional items, consent 7A to 7G. Move Mr. Massey,
Second.
seconded Mr. Kenline. Any questions or comments on these items? Thank you. Item 8, personnel non-instructional. Our recommended action is that the Akron Central School Board of Education, upon the recommendation of Patrick D. McCabe, Superintendent of Schools, does hereby approve the following non-instructional items, consent 8A to 8P. Move Mr. Massey.
Second.
Seconded Mr. Paulkowski. Questions or comments? Thank you. Item 9, district items, the code of conduct. Our recommended actions at the Akron Central School Board of Education, upon the recommendation of Patrick D. McCabe, Superintendent of Schools, is hereby approved the updated code of conduct as submitted by Assistant Principals Mary File and Carolyn Koss. Moved Mr. Massey,
Second.
seconded Mrs. Ka. Questions or comments? Thank you. Item 10, special education. Our recommended action is that the Akron Central School Board of Education, upon the recommendation of Patrick D. McCabe, Superintendent of Schools, does hereby approve special education items, consent 10A and 10B.
Move.
Move Mr. Kenline,
Second.
seconded Mr. Paulkowski. Questions or comments? Item 11, school board correspondence. Tomorrow, Thursday, September 9th, is the ECASB Delegate Assembly at Erie Witowsky from 6:30 to 8:30. Monday, September 13th, ECASB Budget and Finance Team at Erie Witowsky from 6:30 to 7:30. Thursday, October 7th, ECASB Annual Dinner at Salvatore's at 5:30. See Mrs. Redmond. You must register by September 23rd. Sunday, October 24th through Tuesday, October 26th, New York State School Board Convention 2021, New York City. Please see Mrs. Redmond for registration. Mrs. Ka has indicated an interest and a willingness to attend on our behalf this year. Thank you. Upcoming dates: Wednesday, September 22nd is our regular business meeting here in the cafeteria at 7 o'clock. And Thursday, September 23rd is the elementary open house from 5:30 to 7. And as Mr. McCabe indicated, the format is still fluid. Item 13, hearing of individuals and delegations on non-agenda items. Any board discussion?
I already called Pat about this, but I would like to thank the new athletic director for his meeting with all the parents and the athletes that could attend. Well spoken. He, laid down the groundwork, of what everything's expected from our student athletes. I appreciated the time he spent putting that together. And I think the parents did too. And it was nice to have that meeting and then go immediately to talk with the coach and having that immediately after. I think that's a good flow. So everyone's not trying to figure that out themselves. So I did appreciate that. I also called Pat because I heard from several teachers, including the one that lives in my household, how much he appreciated their training that they had gotten for the first 3 days of teacher school. He said it was highly effective. It was really good and probably the best training he's had here in a really long time. So he was much appreciated for that. And I want to make sure that Pat relayed that information because they don't always hear the good stuff. So it was the good stuff. So.
And to follow up on that, we've talked about a board retreat This year, we haven't had one in a couple of years. What I'm going to task Mr. McCabe to do, and he and I will work on it, is try to condense that and put it into a format where we can do that over an evening or a weekend morning or something to continue that.
I've had, based on our earlier conversation, we had talked about aligning the board retreat to some of the work we're doing with advancing our knowledge and capacity to work with our Native American students. So I've reached out to the nation and they'd be willing to work with the board, provide the board some really, really useful information that you may not know. So they are agreeable, but I have not set any dates or times to talk.
I appreciate that, and we just need to get it scheduled or to work on a schedule at this point.
Okay.
Item 14 is executive session. We do have the need to go into executive session this evening to discuss negotiations. We do not anticipate conducting any business when we come out of executive session. If I may have a motion, please. Move, Mrs. K.A.
Second.
Second, Mr. Kenline. Questions, comments, concerns? We're in executive session at 8:33. Again, thank you to everyone who attended tonight and for sharing your concerns and opinions.
I'm gonna need that.
Huh?